situations. Anyway, we'll get into that a little bit later. I think we're finally joined by Andrew. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing great, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Sorry, we had a few technical difficulties, of course,
No worries. I
which
know
is
how it goes.
actually pretty rare for us now. But my internet decided to crash on me right before I had to host the call. So DB had to host it, and he's never done that before.
Well, gotta love the NSA.
Yeah, that's an ironic way to remain positive about this whole situation. Anyway, you got a great
Yes.
interview, and I don't know the kid's name, but you got a great interview with the kid that was down there in McKinney, Texas, that took the video of that cop that was just completely out of control. And I'm sure most people listening tonight have seen the video and saw the way that guy was manhandling, teen girls in a very physical way, and I think in a very abusive and excessive way. But there's so many different people talking about so many different things, and there's a bunch of rumors and myths going around about what actually happened down there. And there must have been a reason why the cop was acting that way, this, that, and the other. So, Andrew, we were hoping that maybe you could dispel some of the myths, and maybe after speaking to the kid that took the video, maybe you could you know, uh, let us know what is actually going on down there.
Well, Nick, I think it's important to say first off that I was not there. So, what I can, bring to the conversation is just what the media is telling me. And, that's always skewed and everything, and everyone has their own biases. So, but what I did learn from talking with Brandon Brooks, that's the name of the kid who was filming the video who I had interviewed. And he had told me that, long story short, it was the last day of high school for his school in McKinney, Texas. And so a couple kids at his school had planned via social media to have a pool party at a local neighborhood. And this was a neighborhood that many of the kids attending the party were actually a part of, according to Brandon. So the kids go there, and obviously all these kids going into a private neighborhood pool, all the parents who were there, or at least most of them, were pretty upset. And it's also worth noting that many of the people that you see in the video were black, were African American, and, making it into something all about race. We can get into that at a later time. But long story short, these people were these parents were upset that the kids were coming into the pool. So uh, then one of the mothers who was in the neighborhood, she was somehow, according to Brandon, who I talked to, got into some, racial argument with one of the kids there. And then apparently, according to Brandon again, the mother pulled the hair of the one child, and they got into a huge physical fight. And then as a result of that, the police were called, and then basically that, to my understanding, is where the video that you see picks up, and all the, violence ensues.
Yeah, man, and so this story had a lot of like shock value because the video is pretty graphic, and it's kind of one of those scenarios where it's kind of overwhelming, especially if you're in the situation. Now, I did
Yeah,
watch the
go
video,
ahead.
and I watched your interview, and the kid that was filming definitely had some insight into what was going on, and I think definitely it does show that there is a lot of racial bias perpetuating through these police departments and the way that they went about what they're doing. I mean, the racism, the guy doesn't have to be wearing a hood and being part of the KKK to do it. It's more subtle than that most times, and that's something too. I think that now we're starting to see these protests today, and I don't know if you saw them, but there is a big, pretty big movement now growing out of what happened down there in McKinney, Texas, because a lot of people feel that it was wrong, and it was a very racist situation that went down. I mean, what do you think about that, and how does this play into this grander scheme of this police brutality issue right now? I mean, what is the implication here? Because what we're talking about now is these teen kids, and they can't even go to a swimming pool party without really being, subjected to this police state type of situation. I mean, it's just getting so crazily intense and so personal now. And thankfully, as you mentioned in your interview, thankfully for this technology with the phones and stuff, we can actually see this kind of stuff happening. So what do you think? How do you think race does play into this? I know that Brandon really noticed, some tendencies there, and what do you think that we can kind of do to, make this, make this a message that we can talk about and confront? Because it's something that's there and it's lying underneath and it's so invisible to a lot of people. But I think it really needs to come to the forefront. What do you think?
Well, I think we've seen with the protests and the riots in Baltimore and Ferguson and the peaceful protests in Cleveland just recently that this issue of racism is really coming to the forefront. As you said, I actually talked to Brandon earlier because CNN actually called me to try to get him on their show, which was kind of funny. It shows how the alternative media is really rising and the mainstream media is trying to, follow up as quickly as possible. But when I talked to Brandon, he told me that there were, like you said, Nick, protests earlier. He said that his mom actually wouldn't allow him to go to the protests, which I found, a little comedic value in. Obviously, still a serious issue, but as you said, I think what I kind of didn't mention in the first part of the story that I told was that like I said, when there was the physical confrontation between the mother from the neighborhood who was white and the black teenager who you saw, or no, it wasn't even the teenager supposedly who got tackled by the cop and everything. She wasn't even involved in that, according to Brandon. Instead, she was just an innocent bystander, and the cop said, "Oh well, you're running your mouth, therefore we somehow have the ability or the obligation to handcuff and detain you," which makes no sense whatsoever. And even in the video, you can hear at least one of the cops. To be fair, I don't think all cops are bad, and the other two seem to act somewhat professionally and compassionately in the situation, but. The cop said, "Oh, well, you're running your mouth." Well, it's kind of ironic then because he was, just earlier and even after dropping F-bombs and just acting completely authoritarian. So, that is part of the story. And that's why all these tying this back into the issue of race, why all these, black kids, these black teenagers were targeted apparently because of the confrontation between the mother and then the other teenager. So apparently these cops just decided, or at least the one cop decided to just, indiscriminately, go after all these people and make them sit down and handcuff them, which I don't really see the legality in. But that's besides the point, because Brandon, I don't like, discriminating or discerning between white and black, because I think, it's unnecessary. But at the same time, Brandon was one of the only, if not the only, white person in this whole, scenario, and the cops, didn't make him sit down or anything. Not that they should have, but I just found Brandon described it as sort of just having this invisibility among all these other people. And then you also see presumably one of the dads from the neighborhood just standing there while all this is going down, just, being a bystander. And it's just, again, like you said in the beginning of this, it's incredible to watch. And especially at the beginning of the video when that officer does a barrel roll.
Yeah, when I first saw the video, I thought it was going to be like a cop blooper roll, but then it turned into something a lot more gruesome. But after watching that video, my first impression was like, this girl literally got manhandled for being black and standing on the sidewalk. I mean, it's just like literally she didn't do anything wrong other than stand there. And okay, if he's going to say she ran her mouth, okay, that's fine. But since when did running your mouth become illegal and, cause to get taken to the ground and thrown in, put your head pushed into the ground, all that stuff? I mean, completely unnecessary, man. But, we've got,
I think
so
it's
many different.
I think
Go ahead.
I think it's a perfect metaphor for, the attack of the First Amendment in the country right now, that, you say something and you're sort of assaulted. So I think it's perfect for that. But also, again, like I said earlier, just to underscore this complete irony and this double standard between these, figures of authority and us as, the peasants, the citizens, that like I said, the cop is running his mouth doing the same exact thing, and there's, no repercussions. The kids aren't yelling at him. Yet when the kids, reply back, with profanity, or I don't even know if any of them used profanity, but they just, respond back to the cop, and he considers that, a threat to him or whatever, and deems it necessary to, assault these people. It's just completely, nonsensical to me.
Exactly, exactly. It didn't make any sense to me either, and it's just crazy. Right now, my friend in Wisconsin was just sending me a news story about a kidnapper in a town down in Wisconsin, where the sheriff department now has brought out, basically, I don't know if you want to call it an MRAP or a Bearcat or whatever, but the sheriff department now using basically armored vehicles to hunt down kidnappers too, down in Wisconsin. And I mean, it just seems like day after day there's these crazy militant stories about cops doing these crazy things. And there was another story today where there was a clearly, mentally ill man that was getting just beat repeatedly in the street with batons. It was very reminiscent of the Rodney King
Yeah,
beating.
I saw that.
And it's just like, man, when is this shit gonna stop?
Exactly, and it's also reminiscent, Nick, of a story that I covered a couple weeks back, or maybe a month back, and I'm sure you saw it as well. It was with Lucas Jewell. He was formerly a part or affiliated with Adam Kokesh and Adam versus the Man. I think they're still friends, but he was part of Adam versus the Man, and he was in Gainesville, Florida, I think, and this basic, MRAP tank, whatever you want to call it, pulled him over, for no apparent reason, or because he, flicked off this vehicle to protest the police state that's, encroaching in our country. And, it was just it was another basically viral video. And it's just absurd, this militarization of police and, the further restricting of our freedoms.
Before we let you go, I want to get your thoughts on two more things. First of all, is a lot of the remedy that we're being fed here, a lot of the solutions, the quote unquote solutions, a lot of them are being piped down from the Obama administration. The first one was the body cams, and Obama got behind that, and it became basically an executive order type of thing. And now they're basically starting to implement that all around the country. So first off, do you think that these problems can be fixed by the federal government, trying to police and rein in all this stuff? Knowing that a lot of this stuff, Program 1033 and a lot of these things are coming from the federal government, so it's like the federal government's feeding all this militarized gear and all of this training and, whatever it is, miscellaneous stuff that is changing the mentality of these local cops. It's a lot of it's coming from the federal government. And then at the same time, it's like the federal government are the ones that are saying, oh, we have the solution. Here's how we fix it. I mean, what do you think of that? I mean, is it valid? And if it's not, what do you think are the solutions that we can, look forward to?
I don't think it's a valid solution to solve the problem of government with more government. Of course, that's what liberals or whoever else want. But no, I don't think it's logical to fix a problem by further adding to the problem. Instead, I'm a conservative, if that's the label people want to use. But I think that the best solution, and we haven't seen it, actively working really well. I shouldn't say we haven't seen it working, but I'd say the best solution is the individual. And, obviously, recording police brutality isn't going to inherently fix the problem, but I think it definitely it does bring it more to light. And I think that's necessary. But I think we will need, going forward, different solutions, because as you said, Nick, 3 stories today, for example, of police brutality. It seems that this technology is almost a double-edged sword. Yes, we're seeing the police brutality, which is, of course, necessary, but at the same time, we're almost becoming desensitized to it because we're seeing it so often. And you have to wonder if that's almost, some agenda implemented by the media to sort of pacify us and assimilate us to what's going on. So I'd say, the solution is to continue spreading the word and just nurturing peaceful relationships with these police, because like I said before, I don't think it's smart to stereotype one group of people. That's like saying, all Muslims are terrorists or whatever. It's nonsensical. So I think by nurturing peaceful relationships. Like, I also did an interview recently with a police officer from Delaware. It was another viral video, and the police officer had the idea of holding up a sign. I'm sure you saw the video that said "free hugs," and these cops went out into the public and offered free hugs to people to sort of show not all cops are bad. We do have compassion, and I think that's really important. So ultimately, by nurturing more peaceful relationships and sort of opening the dialogue instead of just making it so one-sided, I think that, combined with, again, this technology and keeping these people accountable, and not only cops, politicians too, is critical to solving or at least remedying this problem.
Andrew, this is DB. Do you think that this is going to create a backlash against police in the communities and actually ask for a federal response, because it seems to be marching down that way?
As in the response to this particular story in Texas?
No, just it's basically what it is it's a slippery slope, and it's like an avalanche that's gaining traction now, and people are starting to call for cops to be disarmed, wearing body cams, what have you. But then you have a guy like Sharpton saying, well, we need to get the federal government involved to fix this.
Well, I think Sharpton, we could have a whole nother discussion on him. He's not paying his taxes, yet he's walking with clean hands around the nation, giving speeches and going to the White House and everything. But, as far as a backlash, I mean, it seems like this issue of police brutality is really divided. And I think that's part of the problem why it's not fixed, I guess you could say, because, I mean, it all depends on the circumstances, I guess. In this particular case, I don't think the circumstances were justified to, treat these innocent bystanders as the cop did, but it all depends on circumstances. So I guess that's my answer for lack of anything better to say.
That's a good answer, man. I have one last thing before we let you go. I know
Sure.
you're gonna be on CNN tomorrow, right? So I want to let you get to bed early. So I had one last thing. Before we got you on the call,
Go ahead.
we were talking about this $8.5 trillion that's gone basically not missing, but unaccounted for from the Pentagon since 1996. I don't know if you saw this story over the past few days.
I saw the headline, but I didn't read it.
So yeah, basically the Pentagon has lost track of $8.5 trillion, and there was that other amount, the several trillion that went missing right before 9/11, and then that part of the Pentagon got blown up, and of course that part's that's all infamous and stuff. But now this new information comes from a Reuters investigation. So what I had my question for you is, the first thing that comes to your mind, what do you think this 8.5 trillion was spent on? At least part of it. What's the first thing you think it was spent on?
Oh man, so many options. I mean, foreign policy, as in wars, banking. I guess foreign policy, or maybe domestic policy. Now that after all we've been talking about with this, police militarization. So, I mean, specifically, I have no idea. I'd have to read the article and learn more about it. But I guess, foreign policy or, domestic beefing up of police would be my guess. But it's no surprise that government is just happens to lose all this money. I'm sure they do the same with how they spend our tax dollars. So it's very reassuring, of course. And I guess the solution to that would be to simply go into probably the Federal Reserve computers, go get a good relationship with Janet Yellen and just, type in some arbitrary numbers in the computer bank ledger, and then you could just fix the problem like that.
That's a great answer, man. Yeah, I was wondering where the money came from too. I was like, 8.5 trillion bucks. That's crazy. Where the hell did that money come from?
Yeah.
Anyway, Andrew, thanks for calling in, man. Make sure everyone listening tonight, make sure you check out Andrew. He has an organization called Teen Take. Where can people find your work at?
Yeah, the best place to go is youtube.com/teentake, TEENTAKE. And that's where I post weekly videos. And that's also where I posted just this morning, actually, my interview with Brandon Brooks of the McKinney police pool party story, which we've been talking about. And you can view that there. It's already at about 40,000 views in like 10 hours. So it's doing quite well.
Yeah, it's already going viral, man. Great work. And thanks for calling in, man. And we'll have you back on the show, I'm sure, pretty soon here. You get some great interviews with some awesome people. We really like your work. And we'll have you back on soon. Peace, man.
Yeah. Thank you, Nick. Right back at you. Peace.